Sammy. Hey. Hi, baby. How are you? Hey. Say hello to your audience. Ah, yes, 2022. Truly Annus Horribilis, to quote Queen Elizabeth, may she rest in peace, when she was describing one year in her family's life, full of tragic consequences. Well, 2020, when we were still in Slovakia, was bad enough. But 2022 was equally tragic for my family, unfortunately. Not least of which, in the fall of this past year, I came down with COVID. Even though I was fully vaccinated, it was a very close brush with death. I had to be medevaced on a helicopter at midnight one night to Vancouver, where I was put into a medically induced coma for some time to give my body a chance to rest, and for the doctors to try out an experimental COVID drug on me, which fortunately I think I got. It was a 50% chance that I received that and not a placebo, but had a remarkable recovery, and I'm very, very fortunate to be here talking to you today. I'm very thankful for my family, for all the support they gave me, especially my wife, having to take over all the family affairs, deal with my illness and everything else going on in our lives. But I got through, and I woke up paralyzed, paranoid, delusional, and still suffering hallucinations during my recovery period. It was awful. So, just one reason why 2022 was Annus Horribilis, and part of the reason I didn't get any episodes in the can. Hey Sammy, but you did okay. You're still beautiful. Okay, 2023. Let's get on with the show. So a few months back, before the winter weather scared me off any further work in this outdoor hangar situation, and also my work obligations really cut into my time. So before I sort of stopped work for the winter, I was checking out the torque on all the bolts, fixing the wings and appurtenances, and just checking that the torques were correct, and I could sign that off as being done. So, I previously had a couple of torque wrenches and torque adapter that I was using that were just fine for the larger bolts, say AN4, quarter-inch diameter bolts, AN4 and up, AN5, AN6. So no problems there, because the torque readings of, for instance, for an AN4 is 70 inch-pounds, was nicely in the range of these two torque tools. But for the AN3 bolts, which is a 3/16 inch diameter bolts, of which there's a preponderance of on the struts, the float, and the various wing fastenings, I found that when I was checking the torque on them, which should be about 25 inch-pounds, that was completely off the range of this, so I couldn't use that torque adapter, and it was right down at the bottom end of this torque wrench. And I found, in fact, that I was snapping those AN3 bolts, which is quite alarming, because even if you didn't snap the bolt, how close did you come to snapping the bolt and you left it in? That was, anyway, not a good situation. So I ordered a whole bunch of replacement AN3 bolts that will suit all these different positions on the struts and the floats. And I ordered them from Aircraft Spruce, where I get most of my aircraft parts. And I also spent some time finding a torque wrench that would have a range suitable for this. So this is a Texton torque wrench. It goes down to 10 inch-pounds. So that's okay for 25 inch-pounds. I would have liked it to have gone down lower, so that what I'm actually trying to hit at 25 inch-pounds was more in the middle of the range, but I couldn't find anything like that. So this is a quarter-inch drive, And like I say, it is suitable for 25 inch-pounds for the AN3 bolt. So, that's what I'm doing this afternoon on this pleasant May long weekend, as we call it in Canada, celebrating the Queen's birthday. I'll be going from the left wing over to the right wing, and I will be changing out these AN3 bolts and verifying the torque settings and marking them with the high-vis marker. So that's today's assignment. So here's one AN3 bolt that is suspect. It's probably been over torqued in the past. I would say that probably had too much torque on it. Okay, nut is okay. Washer, okay. Washer, okay. Bolt, suspect. Red for bad. Okay, but first, we should measure it. It's, wow, I can even see a bend in the end of it. It's not good. It's an AN 15. 15 on length and 3 on diameter, which I knew already. Okay, garbage. Five, 6, 5, 6, 7. It's always a bad sign when you go through your bolt bin that you've prepared for the job and the bolt size you need is not there. You get that kind of sinking feeling in your gut. Oh no, not another 2 weeks while I order from Aircraft Spruce. Then you think, no, I got lots of other boxes of bolts, I think. Stay with me. Another bag. $12, 13, 11. This is where you say, and I have more bolts back in the storage closet. Oh, please, God, dear God. So as I was having that moment there of doubt about my capability to organize my work and order the right parts, keeping in mind I ordered them a few months ago, before I went back to my storage lockup where I do have more bolts, I thought I'd check my paperwork. So on Aircraft Spruce, you get a detailed billing statement, and sure enough, one bag of AN3-15A bolts, exactly what I'm looking for. So they weren't here, so obviously I misbagged them, I misorganized them, if that's a word, and I've got them. So, oh, that's a relief. So here we go. Little bit of Bow Shield T9 rust and corrosion protection on the threads. As I get close, I switch to the torque wrench, which is set up for 25 inch-pounds. There you go. Voila. And then a little bit of torque marker to record the fact that I've done this, and also it should reveal in the future if for whatever reason the torque backs off on the nut, and there should be a crack displayed. Okay, so one down. I don't know how many dozens more to go, but so having finished working on fixing all the bolts on the front side of the wings, I'm now on the back side, and what I'm going to do is take off the flaps and ailerons and make sure that the hinges and other mechanical devices that fix them to the wing are properly riveted and bolted and torqued. Yeah, teamwork is what you need, and people with very small fingers, and people who can basically stand in a limbo position.
You go washer in and then button nut.
Yeah, that's right. There's a thin washer in that metal cup that your mother has. Thin nut, and then that castle, thin washer, then a castle nut. So I'm continuing on with sort of mechanical completion and checkout here, having removed the flaps and the elevators on both sides, and gone inside where the hinges are to make sure that they're properly riveted on, torqued, and that the many castle nuts have got the little pins put through them, cotter pins. So that's done on the wings now. So I've moved back to the empennage. I've removed the rudder and the elevators from both sides. That's them over there waiting on the pallet, while I'll make sure that all these hinges are properly bolted in place. See that some of them, for whatever reason, are kind of loose. Get all that done. And while doing this, I noticed, and this is why I'm doing this, underneath here, there's a bolt in there which secures these guy wires, and it doesn't look right. It looks like it's pulled loose. So I'm gonna take all this off right now, unfortunately, to check that bolt and put it back together. This is why it's so important to check all these fasteners and check them off and mark them with the torque seal, because you know that they've been done. Okay, here we go. Another fiddly day playing with fasteners. The big reveal. Ta-da! This is an AN4 55 bolt. Goes through the boom tube and secures into a threaded nut plate, it's called, which is riveted on the bottom of the boom tube. Obviously it's pulled loose. Must have pulled loose when I put these wires in. The wing to tail stays, if you're a sailor perhaps. I had a heck of a time getting these positioned and fixing them on the wingtips. But the only way I see to get this bolt secured again, because it'll go down, but it won't go into the nut plate. The only thing I can do is take these off at that end, because they have to be on this end when I put the bolt down. And that means ultimately I'm going to have to loosen up the wings. Oh God, this is why this build has been taking 8 years. It's all this figuring out how to do it the first time, then having significant problems midterm trying to figure out what I'd done before, why I couldn't finish it, and getting it done. And then when I'm coming to the final completion, I have to undo it all again. Live and learn. Trying to fasten the guy wire that goes from the outboard midspan of the wings back to the empennage. These guy wires are obviously precision made. They're very exact and obviously designed to fit. There's no way to loosen or tighten them, make them shorter or longer. So attaching them at both ends is a real bugger. So to do this, I've loosened off the main bolts on the wing spars and down on that support, and I've attached this strop to the tail wheel assembly and up here, and just putting enough tension on that I can slip that bolt down in. Almost there. So I'm doing my final finishing on all parts of the airplane, most recently on the empennage. I like saying that. Empennage. What the hell's the empennage? Well, that's the tail section. So I've done the vertical fin and the rudder, the horizontal stabilizers, and now I'm working on the elevators. Just basically making sure that all the connections are done properly. Okay, so now moving on to something completely different. Thank God, okay? Gap seals. Anywhere that there's a gap between, say, a fixed part and a moving part, or two fixed parts on the flying surfaces, that gap could upset the air flow over the flying surfaces, upset the boundary layer, create turbulence, whatever. I don't know. I'm an engineer. I should know. But let's not get into that right now. So gap seals have to be placed in various places around the plane. One is right here between the main wing and the pylon. There'll be another one wrapping around the front of the wing and going to the back between the two wings. And this extra piece goes on the other side. So I've already kind of placed the gap seal here. And the way you secure it is use sheet metal screws, 3/4 inch long by number 10 sheet metal screws, and I'm sure there was probably 100 of them that came with the kit. I won't check the manifest because it's just disappointing to know that they're all used up somewhere in the plane, and I had to go down to the local hardware store here in Canada to get replacements. And of course, being Canada, they don't have the Phillips head, which is the cross, which is used probably in most of the world. I'm not sure, certainly is in the States. Canada, things tend to be Robinson or Robertson. I'm not sure what it is. Our own Canadian homegrown screwdriver. What do you call that thing? It's not a slot in this case. It's a square. Not a cross. It's a square. So it takes a special screwdriver, of course, which means an extra tool in the tool kit on the plane, which is not good. And I'm sure eventually I'll change all these out, but for Phillips. But this is what I got for now. And what does it go into for a nut? Well, it goes into what you might call a sheet metal nut. In the manual, it's called a tinner nut. More generically, a sheet metal nut, which is made of spring steel, which you can clip on, and then you drive this machine, the sheet metal screw through it. That way you don't need a nut on the other side. Yeah, should work. So there's the co-pilot seal, co-pilot side lower gap seal installed. Only took about 15 minutes today compared to more than an hour on the pilot side yesterday. Anyway, helps to have some experience and familiarity with the job. Now, the challenge is going to be putting the gap seal under there, around there, over the top, as the gap seal between the wings, because that one requires the antennas and the OAT, the outside air temperature sensor, to be mounted. So, should be fun. The top gap seal there that fills in the gap between the two wings and runs from the underside of the wings up over the top side of the wings is coming into place slowly. It's very difficult to line those screws up, and on the other side of the
Well, the screws go into little angles that are attached to the wings, and you put little Timmerman nuts on there, and oh my God, it's difficult. Difficult place to work because you're kind of standing, sitting in the cockpit. Not much room underneath, and it's very difficult to measure and accurately drill. But what the heck, we're building a plane. That's what it's all about. Difficult. And there's the top part of the top gap seal done. And who said this was difficult? Come on, Bob. Stop whining. I think that looks pretty good. So, having got the gap seal in place now between the wings, I can mount the antennas. There's 4 antennas and 3 antennas and 1 outside air temperature probe that goes up on the gap seal. And also, as part of moving along with the instrumentation install, you know, the antennas and the cabling, I'm also going to work on the Pitot tube and the AOA sensor, which are positioned out here on the wing and worked by air pressure moving through, first of all, these aluminum tubes, which come with the Pitot tube, and then through these plastic tubes, through the wing, down the pylon, and the fuselage, and up behind the control panel. Now, this came from Dynon as part of the Dynon kit. What I didn't order was the connection kit, which includes all the connecting fittings from here to there, including all the hose. And the reason I didn't buy it is the hose came with my wiring kit, and I didn't want to pay twice for the hose. Perhaps in hindsight I should have bought it and just not used the hose, because there's a lot of fittings in there that would have been useful at this point. So what I've had to do is purchase the fittings separately. I've decided to use these what are called push to connect type connectors, and they just push on to the hose, which will be very useful here, one end here, at the joint in the tubing between the wing and the pylon, and then hooking up to the different instruments. Different types of push to connect connectors, including T's and elbows. I've got them. What I don't have is the fittings that will allow me to hook the aluminum tubes up to the plastic tube. Yeah, that involves, I think at this point, some AN connectors and flaring of this tube once I cut it to length, these 2 tubes once I cut them to length. I also need mast, which will go in here, which will allow this Pitot tube to be mounted at the right distance, and then the mast goes up to here, and the mast bolts on somehow to the wing or to the spars. So anyway, that's what I want to do. Can't do it because I've got all these fittings on order. One thing I can work on today is installing the VHF antenna. The VHF antenna goes up here on the gap seal. You can see I've already done a couple of simpler antennas. I got the ELT antenna up there, and it's hooked up to its own coax cable, which came with the ELT. So that coax cable runs from obviously underneath the gap seal down the pylon to the position here in the luggage compartment, back there in the luggage compartment where the ELT will be mounted. And then this is the VHF antenna. As I said, I couldn't install it before because, bear with me, I couldn't install it before because this backing plate, aluminum backing plate, which was sent to me with the kit, is the wrong one. So I didn't want to assume that it was the wrong one, because assume makes an ass out of you and me, and I didn't want to start drilling and modifying this. So I called the manufacturer, Rami Products, and very quickly got a hold of a technician who assured me that, and apologized for having sent the wrong backing plate, and told me just to drill out the hole so that the antenna will mount as it should. So that's what I'm going to install today, is the VHF antenna up on the top cap seal, and then wait whatever it takes, a few days, hopefully no more than that, to get the fittings to allow me to install a Pitot tube, and then all the coax cable fittings, because the cables that came with my wiring harness did not have the fittings, because of course whoever put the wiring harness together didn't know what antennas or radios, transponders, or whatever I would be hooking those coax cables up to. Okay, indeed, making progress now. Each one of these little screws has a lock washer with teeth on it, and the dyno instructions say to be very sure that you put that in properly, because those teeth have to scrape the paint to make sure that you get a good ground of the antenna to the airplane through this aluminum plate. This is going surprisingly well today. Okay, I got all 4 bolts in there now, and the lock washers on both sides are good, and didn't miss any parts, I don't think. I've still got the oak sensor put in here. But I'll do that on another day, because this was a good day. I don't want to destroy it by coming across another difficult task and getting all frustrated. So let's end on a high note. So I think finally I've got all my stuff together, meaning parts and tools and knowledge of how to connect up my Pitot tube to the plastic tubing, and then the plastic tubing, how to connect it into the instruments and the EFIS. I got a critic up on the pole here. How to connect all the tubing up. I got all the stuff. First tool. It's a tube cutting tool. It doesn't cost very much, but I think I'm told it's essential. So when you cut the tubes, that the cut is square, and that you don't put pressure on in such a way that you flatten the tube for it to fit into the push to connect connectors properly. It's important that the cut be done properly. So that's why I invested whatever it was, I can't remember, $10 on aircraft spruce for that. Presumably you can get by without it, but I'm not better safe than sorry. Don't have the right tool. Okay, so there's the Pitot tube, 2 aluminum tubes, which are flared for the fitting. The mast, this will be located somewhere here on some sort of support, okay? And then with the push to connect fitting on there. This was the a part that was quite difficult to get. I eventually got up from aircraft spruce, but it has the proper taper to match the flare on the tube on this end, and then on the other end it's just an MBT thread that will fit in here. So presumably the way this works, and I'll put some Teflon tape on these threads, is like so. Now, all seems to fit. And that'll go
there, and I'll have the mast on here, and then the support there. So, like I say, I got all my stuff together now that I can do that job. So here's the bow deck upside down, and you can see the airspeed indicator mounted in the instrument panel. And then on the other side of it are the two ports for the pitot tube and the static port tube. And those have got to be connected to these hoses using T's. Now the signal from the pitot tube also has to service the ASI instrument, the airspeed indicator instrument, airspeed indication. So that means I have to put a T in here. So I'm going to be cutting this tube, the pitot tube, tubing, putting a T, and then another piece of hose tubing will come out of here and go this way and secure to the ASI instrument, which will be about right here, because it's mounted in the upper deck. And I have to have enough room on that I can extract that ASI instrument out and into the co-pilot seat to disconnect it or service it or whatever. So I need a T in here and another piece of hose there, and that's the pitot tube signal to the EFIS and to the ASI. The AOA tube only has to come to the EFIS. Okay, so that's the AOA and the pitot tube tubing and connections. And then there is the static port connections. I have a static port, one here on the left side of the plane and one over on the other side. The static ports have to be connected here on the EFIS and also on the ASI, which is back here. So to do that, I'm going to put a little bit of tube onto this static port, then put a right angle push to connect connector, run the hose here, put in a T, because there's got to be a drain provision apparently according to the Seaplane manual. So there's got to be a little leg that hangs down with a little valve on it, I guess, to drain it in the event you get some water in there. So the hose comes from the right angle, the L, into the T, and then from here the hose comes to here, then another T, and this will then go into the static port of the EFIS, and then this hose will follow along like this and go up to this area where the ASI is located. No, that's not right. This hose coming out of this T will then have another T for a drain, and then a T up to the ASI, and out of that T into the other static port. Something like that. So I need to get some more hose. I've got lots of fittings. I need some more hose. Okay, so there's the pitot, AOA, and static tubing hooked up. You can see the 3 lines going into the EFIS there. And then coming back, and then here we have the static port on the pilot side. And the static lines going over to where they'll service the ASI, the airspeed indicator. Then over to the static port on the co-pilot side with a T off for a drain valve if any water gets in there. And then the 2 dynamic hoses as opposed to the static ones, they run back
and then up the pylon and out the wing to where the Pitot / AOA tube is mounted. Next step. And then using my handy dandy safety wire pliers, I safety wired that little bit of tubing there onto the static port. So to hold the Pitot tube to the strut, I've made up a little support out of 1 inch by 1 inch by 1/16 inch thick aluminum angle that I cut using a hacksaw and drilled with my drill press. You can see the 2 little pieces here. I'll have 3 number 8 by 1/2 inch long bolts to hold that in, and then I'll drill a hole about here to match up with this already in place strut fixing bolt. Actually, it's the sponsoon leg. Yeah, so that should work out okay. Now I think that's a really nice mount. My grade 9 metal working teacher would be really impressed, I think. I think that's going to do the job. It'll have the Pitot tube hanging at about the right distance, according to the manuals, below the wing. It's parallel to the wing, and I can adjust it by backing off this bolt in here and then retightening it so I can make sure it's on the same angle of attack, so to speak, as the wing. Yeah, I think that's pretty damn good. Not bad, Bob. There she be with the tubes hooked up. Now all I have to do is secure the actual Pitot tube to the mast here, drilling a couple of little holes and with some little screws.
That's all, folks.